Hi, this lecture is on digestion and nutrition. Just as a background, this is just the stuff that we have already covered in the course. The ultimate source of all life, all the energy for life comes from the sun. Some organisms, green plants, can make their own food. They are called autotrophs. Some organisms do not use light, but rather they use chemicals to produce their own food. They are called chemotrophs. And finally, animals, pretty much all animals, they cannot make their own food. They have to consume food that is made by other organisms. So we are heterotrophs. Heterotrophic feeding is of many different types. Herbivores are those that feed mainly on plants. Carnivores feed on other animals. Omnivores feed on both plants and animals. And saprophagous animals feed on decaying organic matter, like the dung beetle that is shown at the bottom. Sapro means rotten matter. Phagy means eat. So saprophagous are animals that eat rotten, decaying matter. Again, this is a recap, but this shows what actually is digestion. Digestion is not only ingestion of food, but rather after the ingestion of the food, what happens to the food that is eaten. So there's the act of eating itself called mechanical digestion. Then those little pieces of food get into the body. Those pieces of food are broken down by this process called chemical digestion or hydrolysis, using water to break down these bigger compounds into smaller compounds, smaller molecules. And those smaller molecules are then absorbed into the body. Some are used to build the body, um, some are used to just sustain the body, just to survive. And there is also some material that is undigested that never actually enters the body, right? So feces, poop, if you will, those will just get out of the body. Now, of these, the most important, in all of this, what is happening here is the big molecules of food are polymers, and those polymers are being broken down into monomers. And those monomers eventually may be used up to make polymers. For example, this is from one of the previous slides. The big molecules, macromolecules, carbs, proteins, fats, and nucleic acids are made of their own corresponding subunits, simple sugars, amino acids, fatty acids, and nucleotides, which will, the catabolism process, the digestion process is breaking these into smaller molecules. And the anabolism process is after those amino acids reach the cells or tissues, those may be used to build proteins, right? Our muscles, for example, have a lot of protein that is made by those amino acids. So both of those things are happening in the body. But digestion in particular is about breaking the big molecules into smaller subunits. This is another diagram that shows the big macromolecules and their corresponding compounds. Proteins are made of amino acids. Uh, more complex sugars are made of simpler sugars, monosaccharides. Nucleic acids are made of nucleotides, and fats are made of fatty acids and glycerol. Now, digestion requires proteins to break down into amino acids. That is done by the enzyme proteases or peptidases. Sugars are broken down by the enzyme amylases. Nucleic acids are broken down by nucleases, and fats are broken down by fat digesting enzymes. This we have talked about this again before, but I want to clarify the difference between egestion and excretion. The easiest way to remember is egestion is poop, excretion is pee. Okay, so what is the difference between those things? Not only that one is solid and another one is liquid, but rather remember the poop actually is always in the alimentary canal. From the mouth, in the gut, it is always there. It never actually enters into your body. It never reaches your tissues, your lungs, your heart, your fingers, what have you. But the water and the nutrients that are absorbed, those will get from the gut into the body and eventually all parts of the body. So excretion is material that has actually entered the body. Egestion is material that has never been inside the body, that has been undigested. Excretion is digested waste, metabolic waste. Let's talk about different modes of feeding. The first one is filter feeding or suspension feeding. This is where organisms may have ciliated tentacles or hair-like structures of some kind, and they will have sort of fan-like structure. Water will pass through it, and the food that is in the water will be trapped there. So that's how they will eat. Sometimes water just automatically passes through it. Sometimes they will beat the tentacles or the cilia or whatever so that the water will be pulled in. Fan worms have the ciliated tentacles, which is shown over here. Mollusks have these gills, which allow filtering of the water, and baleen whales have these huge baleens, which is what they use to filter the shrimp and things like that to eat them. Feeding on fluids is, of course, very common. It is characteristic of parasites. Think of leeches and such, and perhaps flatworms, tapeworms and such. They will oftentimes feed on fluids. So what they do essentially is, well, you could be internal parasite or external parasite. Oftentimes you usually just bite a little chunk of the tissue and then make a little hole so that from that hole you can suck up the blood from the prey. Some feed on the intestinal contents. That is also something that happens. And also note that when the leech is done eating and the leech is gone, you will continue to bleed from that wound. And the reason is the leech oftentimes adds, when it is making, sucking it up, it adds its own anticoagulant, this substance that prevents the blood from clotting. Because as you can imagine, if the leech is sucking up the blood, and and because of the platelets, the wound keeps on filling. The leech cannot suck up enough fluid, so it has this extra mechanism that essentially prevents that clogging from happening. So it is called anticoagulant. The most common is feeding on food masses, such as this African egg-eating snake, which, again, as the name suggests, eats an entire egg. Note that the egg is much larger than the mouth, and the snake can actually dislocate its jaw, making it much larger than what should be possible. We cannot dislocate our jaw, but these snakes can. So they can eat much larger stuff than what you might think they would be able to. So once the snake eats that, it will crush the egg. All the fluids inside the egg will be digested. All the shell will be, they will essentially burp it out. Animals oftentimes either eat the whole thing, or they may just bite a piece of it. So they may also have teeth to bite and hold. Some may employ some kind of toxin because if you are a snake or something like that, and you want to eat, I don't know, you are eating a rabbit or something like that, you might attack it. You might inject the venom on the rabbit, and when the rabbit dies, then you will eat it, right? Birds do not have true teeth, and you remember that that is the case because teeth are very heavy tissues, and so it is very expensive and very heavy, so it will not help them fly. So not having teeth means that they will be light, and so they can fly better. Some birds may have serrated beaks, like this picture here shows ivory-billed arcari, which has this serrated beak, which allows them to grasp the prey really well. Then you have the predators, which can eat in many different ways. The most common example that I want to show is that of polychaetes, which, remember, eat because of that muscular retractable pharynx. Retractable meaning that they can take it out and then grab something and pull it in, right? There is a link for the video there. You should watch that. Some organisms may use teeth to grip the prey until it is swallowed. Some animals use suction feeding. So, the prey is right here, and the animal gets close and then suddenly opens the mouth, and the food just gets sucked into the mouth. What happens once the food gets into the body? Well, first, the food may be broken down because of chewing and all that, but once it reaches the cellular level, the bigger molecules will have to be broken down to smaller molecules for absorption. Then those smaller molecules will eventually be used up to make big molecules like fats and proteins and carbs that is stored in your body. Digestion in sponges and protozoa is intracellular, which means within the cell, right? Because they are single cellular organisms. Sponges do not have any tissues. So here's how this works. You have food particles getting into the cell. They make this vacuole. The food vacuole comes into contact with the lysosome, which has all these enzymes that will break down the food particles. So they will get in contact together. The enzyme will break down the food particles. It will be digested. The waste will be taken out to the outside of the cell. So that's how this works. Of course, because these organisms they eat, their digestion is intracellular, they cannot eat very big food particles because, well, I mean, if you are small, you cannot, there is a limit to how big a food particle you can eat. In larger organisms, we have alimentary canal, and so we have extracellular digestion. Extracellular meaning outside the cell. Most organisms have pretty much similar basic plan, just like we talked about the basic plan that many organisms share for the brain, forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Same kind of deal with the alimentary canal. Here, the different colors show different parts of the alimentary canal, and you see that the foregut is shown in green in earthworm, grasshopper, dog, and human, always the same. Then the midgut is the small intestine, always in the same order, right? And then you finally may have the hind gut, which is everything from the large intestine to anus. They all share the similar design, but the details may be quite different. Some organisms have specialized organs. For example, birds, insects, and worms oftentimes have gizzard. So there's that structure right there. This gizzard is what these birds use to grind food because they might eat, for example, seeds and things like that. And seeds are really hard, right? Once it gets in there, you need to break it down into small particles. How do you do that? Well, these birds and other animals may eat small pieces of rock, and now they can grind the food. If anyone has eaten chicken gizzards or something like that, you will know that they are very muscular, very tough structures. So because they have to be, because that's what they are using to grind food. Before that, perhaps some organisms may also be able to chew the food to break it into smaller pieces. Teeth help with that. The diagrams at the bottom show the different types of teeth in different types of animals. You note again that the same color means similar kind of teeth. The red for incisors, which are used for cutting. These are the ones that we typically think of as our canines. Incisors for cutting towards the front, canines for ripping and tearing, premolars right behind that for shearing, and molars for grinding. Now you have to remember these in order, okay? Which one comes towards the front, which one is at the back? You have to remember them in order. Incisors, then canines, then premolars, and then molars. Different organisms eat different kinds of foods, and their teeth may also be similarly different. For example, carnivores often have huge canines, as is shown in that middle figure. Humans do not have very big canines, suggesting that humans do not have, I guess, what it takes to be a proper carnivore. Humans are not supposed to be a complete carnivore. Herbivores and others have very good molars and premolars because grass is actually really tough. So you have to have really good molars and premolars so that you can crush all that leaves and stem. Then you swallow the food. The salivary glands in the mouth may have some kind of toxin to quiet the struggling prey. There is also the salivary gland oftentimes right behind the mouth, which produces saliva, right? So that's what that also helps both with it may have toxin to acquire the struggling prey, but it may also allow swallowing to go better. On top of that, they also have salivary amylase, which breaks down the starch into smaller fragments. Salivary amylase breaks the starch into smaller fragments. That is something important for you to remember. Then, once it is swallowed, the esophagus will transport the food from the mouth to the stomach. And that is shown here. The When you eat something, that the green stuff is the food. That's when you have a small one swallow worth of food, that is called a bolus. When that bolus gets in, the nose and the mouth have are connected together. So you have to make sure that it will go to the right opening, right? Not towards the lungs, but rather towards the mouth. So right now, if you are chewing, the air goes from the nose into the lungs. But if the food is being swallowed, then uh, that epiglottis, that little thing right behind the mouth, that will be pushed down by the bolus, so that epiglottis shuts the way towards the lungs, and the food will now go towards the stomach, which is that little passage right behind that. Okay, initially it is closed, then it is open. Once the food is swallowed, the epiglottis comes back up, and then you can breathe again. If you eat and breathe at the same time, that is when things can mess up, and then your food might go towards lungs and you choke. So that's not good. Now, food is moved by peristalsis towards the stomach, and we'll see a quick video of that in the next slide. Maybe in a couple of slides. So, what happens? How do we break the big molecules into small molecules? This I showed in one of the previous slides, but want to show it again. Proteins are broken down to amino acids by this enzyme pepsin. Carbohydrates reduced to simple sugars by amylase, and fats are reduced to glycerol and fatty acids by lipase. Most of these are hydrolytic enzymes or hydrolases, which means hydro is for water, lysis is for breakdown. So these break down the big molecules into smaller molecules by using water, by adding water. The stomach, then if the food reaches the stomach, where it is kept there for some digestion happens there. No, not much absorption actually happens, but some digestion happens. Now, stomach enzymes at the time act at really low pH, very, very acidic, pH of 1 to 3. That is very, very acidic. Now, all that acid, why is that necessary? Because, well, if there are toxins in the food, then you don't want, or toxins or pathogens, you want to kill those things, right? So having high pH would kill those pathogens. So it is good that we have high pH, but the problem is that, well, now all that pH is going to attack the gut lining itself, right? The stomach lining, that would not be good. So what do? Well, the gut actually has a layer that prevents the hydrochloric acid from attacking the gut lining itself. When you get more food, there's more of that acid, and so as needed, essentially. Then after the stomach, the food goes into the small intestine, which has three parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. That's the main reason of absorption that you need to remember. Okay, that is the main reason of absorption. Most of the nutrients is absorbed into the body in the small intestine. Because we want to absorb a lot of energy, the small intestine is really big. You want to increase the surface area. One way to increase that is by making it really long. Another way is, well, if you don't want to make it really long and tubular, you could, for example, make it circular, right? Spiral, for example. If you do not have if you do not have a lot of space to build a staircase, maybe you can build a round spiral staircase so that it does not take up a lot of time, a lot of space. So that is some mechanism some individuals, some species have, like lampreys and sharks. Now, within the intestine, you could increase the intestine surface area even further by instead of having it smooth, make it more zigzag, right? Make instead of making it just a sort of like a PVC pipe, make that PVC pipe really jagged so that it increases the surface area. If that's the small intestine, for example, that inner surface of the small intestine actually has more of these finger-like things. And within that, they have even microvilli. Each of those little finger-like things are called villi, and they have microvilli, again, increasing the surface area substantially. In fact, about 1,000 times. Increasing the surface area is really, really important. And if it is hard for you to digest food, then you need to have high surface area. For example, herbivores need to get a lot of energy, but plant does not have a lot of energy, or it is difficult to get energy from the plant. So herbivores tend to have really, really huge intestines compared to carnivorous species. And I believe you already saw the inner lining of the alimentary canal during one of the labs from maybe last week or the week before or something like that. All right. Now, well, when the food gets into the alimentary canal, we said that they will be moved around by peristaltic movement, right? It will happen sort of like automatically, and there's the gut. Gut has its own nervous system that controls it, so all of that happens sort of in a pretty interesting manner. It's called peristalsis, which you can show again in this video. But this is sort of like the example we saw with with earthworms moving, where you make certain parts of it really big so that it has a lot of area. And so if you have a lot of area and the rest of the area has is really tight, it will move towards this hollow space, right? So it will essentially go from you make it big one place, you squeeze it from here. Once it goes there, make the other side big, and you squeeze from here, right? You keep doing that to move the food forward. In fact, for example, if you eat something and you stood on your hands, like upside down, if you stood like that, do you think the food would go into your stomach or not? Well, actually, it will. It will, right? So the reason is it does its own thing. It happens automatically. And you also do not want the food to come back. So oftentimes there are these valves, these sphincters that prevent the food from getting back the way it is coming. All right, so that's about digestion. This last couple of slides is about nutritional groups, which I'm sure you already know, but there are six main nutritional groups: carbs and fats, which are main fuels. Amino acids are the units of proteins. They are needed to make proteins and other compounds, enzymes, and such. Minerals are required for ions of body fluids and to form structural components. Vitamins, you don't need a lot of it, but you cannot make it. So you need to get it from other sources. And water is a critical solvent for all kinds of stuff in your body. Out of the 20 amino acids commonly found in proteins, 8 are essential to humans. So we need those 8. The other ones maybe we don't need that. What do we get these food items from? Carbs you often get from sweet stuff, right? Starchy stuff. Proteins from meat products, dairy products, eggs and such. Cheese, fat from, again, cheese and things like that, dairy products, but also seeds, oftentimes avocado, fish, and you have all kinds of animal fat, all of those things. All right, to summarize, animals are heterotrophs because they cannot make their own food. They have to get it from other ways, other organisms. Animals can be divided into many different groups based on how they acquire the food. Saprobes and detritivores eat dead organic matter. Filter feeders strain the aquatic environments for small food items. Herbivores eat plants. Carnivores eat animals. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. Carbs, fats, and proteins in food supply animals with metabolic energy. Fats have lots more energy than carbohydrates and proteins, but all of those are important. Digestion is about breaking down the complex food molecules into their monomers. So, carbohydrates to simple carbohydrates, proteins to amino acids, nucleic acids to nucleotides, and fats to fatty acids and glycerol. Those breaking down of those things happen because of hydrolytic enzymes, and you need to remember which hydrolytic enzyme is used to break down proteins or carbs or fats. Because we want to increase the absorptive surface area, the gut has a huge surface area because of villi and microvilli. The digestion mainly happens in the stomach. The absorption mainly happens in the small intestine. All right, that's all I have for this. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you in class.